Chief, thank you for joining us. We are approaching, just a few days from now, the 1 year since Antoine Rose was shot and killed by a Pittsburgh police officer. Obviously, that was not your department, but it did have a seismic impact across the region. 1 year later, what can you point to, or can you point to anything and say, this is different in the way we are operating as a result of that, shooting?
I can say is, on behalf of the Pittsburgh Police, one of the things that we did leading up to the trial of the officer was create a civilian affairs team where we selected officers who their primary duty was to communicate with organizers, and if there was a pop-up protest or anything like that. So we separated it from those who were assigned to the event, where they could talk and then mediate between our officers, and they reported directly to myself. So I knew who was out there, and they knew the mission, they knew what we expected. So I think that was a good thing for us. We've learned a lot from it, and that's growing for us in creating a policy for that and what they do, for what that unit does. I think one of the good things was the collaboration between the City of Pittsburgh, County Police, Sheriff's Office, and some of the outside agencies, so that we were all on the same page. One of the things when that happened, on both sides, there was things of for and against protesting from the community. We looked at it as being a part of the national initiative. A lot of the things that we learned through building community and trust was the fact that... And
that's the Obama program?
Yes, that's correct.
Just explain what that is, yeah.
So there were 6 cities in 2014 that were selected to be pilot cities for the national initiative. And it went with procedural justice, implicit bias, and then reconciliation. And one of the part with the reconciliation is addressing and understanding and taking ownership on past harms that have happened in our history of policing. We are the ones, the lowest level of the government, but we're the ones that enforce the laws that are created from above. But understanding that it just simply, and this is just for the way I looked at it, and our team looked at it, was that it's not just the shooting. As tragic as it is, it's things that have happened over years and years in the city of Pittsburgh, Allegheny County. So you got to understand why it's going, and I think that's a level of how we handled it in Pittsburgh.
Did the shooting cause you to rethink any of your practices on training, your protocols on use of force? What kind of review, if at all, did you do about your operations after this happened?
So I think we have fairly good policies, but policies change based on incidents that occur, to include things that happen to us over the years. We have a policy unit that's all they do is review best practices across the country, and then we ask our firearms and use of force and things like that to look at incidents to see what you can learn from. So we do that.
And what did you learn from this?
What did we learn as Pittsburgh Police?
Yeah.
Just reviewing on when somebody flees from the police. What do you look at for that? What threat does that cause? But I think we were ahead of the game with that than these other places, because over the years of our training, we put a lot of emphasis on training. When you come into the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police, you have several months of training, 4 months of training that's mandated by the state. It's through the state police. It's through the MOPEC Commission. But on top of that, we keep them for another 3 or 3.5 months to provide a lot more: body-worn camera, tasers, less lethal, de-escalation. So there's a lot that we do on top of that. And then they go out in field training with a veteran officer for several more months. So it's almost a year before they go out on the street by themselves. I think we've learned a lot over the years of doing training where they're doing scenario-based training. So that's just all in the academy, and then there's the stuff that we do every year. A few years ago, we increased our use of force training from, I believe it was less than 8 hours, to 20. So we recognize that we need to have the officers prepared to understand how to handle a situation.
You know, because one of the challenges that this tragedy brought up was just how much decentralization and diffusion and fractionation of authority there is in Allegheny County. We talked about in the previous panel over 100 police departments just in this county alone. Given the way in which the actions of one may affect the perceptions of all, do you think there is a need for more common standards, more common practices that would apply to police departments across the county?
I do. My personal opinion is that you do. We all have to be on the same page. You can go through any department and look through their policies, because we do it. We research policies all across the country and look for the best practices, and they're similar but different in a lot of different ways. I think in having 120-some police departments can be troublesome, and it's nothing against that, but you've got anywhere between maybe one full-time police officer and 10 part-time, 30 officer departments, 20, but they're all different. They all have different financial means. For us, it's an investment in money. We're fortunate that we're able to take officers off the street and provide additional training.
So what's the best mechanism to create more countywide standards?
Well, I think it would have to be more of a statewide to do it. And coming through Municipal Police Officer Training Commission, I think that's where it needs to come. They give you guidelines every year on your in-service training. You have to do legal updates, and then they give you electives that you can do. But we can do this and you do this. You have a little more autonomy to create programs, which we've created more towards scenario-based to prepare.
Would more consolidation help too? Should there be fewer than 120?
I believe so.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's a lot of different agencies, and you have like you said, it could be more fragmented because of that. I don't know what the number is that you need. You know, I mean, we're City of Pittsburgh. We have 90 communities. We have 900 officers. Can debate back and forth whether we need more or we're good where we're at, but we're our own regionalized police department.
Yeah. Representative Lee, you know, one of those possible changes at state level, Representative Lee, who was here earlier, is part of a group that is sponsoring a legislation to change the use of force law that governs the police use of force, which obviously was at issue in that case. What do you think of those proposals to change the state use of force laws?
Well, I'm not a politician. I'm a police officer. I do my job as a police officer based on the laws that are on the books. If laws are changed, we address them, and they're changed all the time. Different things. But there does need to be some more oversight with that.
Mm-hmm. So, in terms of, just to be clear, in terms of the kind of legislation that she and others are sponsoring, you guys you're neutral. You have no. You don't.
For me,
yeah,
it's what the state legislators say. It's what the U.S. Constitution says. It's what even the local district attorney's office says. I mean, any arrest we make that's a felony has to be reviewed with the district attorney's office for, and I'm fine with it.
Let me ask it in a broader sense, not tying it to specific legislation. Is it too hard to convict a police officer for improperly using force? Are the standards too narrow?
Is it difficult? Yeah, I think you can look at cases across the country. Some legit, some maybe not. Some things you see that you look at it and you're like, wow, that doesn't look good. That's laws across the country with that.
So in some cases, you're saying it is too hard. You've seen activity that you think should be sanctioned that hasn't been.
Yeah, and I think even take it away from the law enforcement side. I mean, the criminal side. But you see things that occur, and I'll just say this for in Pennsylvania, that you'll discipline or terminate an employee, and an arbitrator will bring them back. That's a tough thing.
We've talked a lot about reform and equity here this morning, and that is kind of a central focus of this conversation. But one thing that's very clear is that law enforcement officials, and I've been in a lot of different cities, law enforcement officials and elected officials understand that they are also being judged by safety. by the perception of safety in the community. Violent crime is coming down in Pittsburgh. It's down about 30%, I think, in the last 5 years. What's allowed you to do that? And are these questions of equity a hindrance in bringing down violent crime, or can they be complementary?
I think they'd be complementary. What helps us is we've invested a lot into engagement with the community. We've opened it up. We want to hear. We may not always agree, but you need that input from the community. We're all in this together. It's their community. Everybody, I think, wants a safe community. Now, when you say about perception, perception in numbers can always be different. You could go into a community meeting and the people don't feel safe, and you say, well, look, crime's been done. But their perception is crime is there, and you've got to recognize that perception plays a big role. And I think, as we talked before, I look more to perception than the reality of the numbers, because if you're perceiving that it's not safe, then that's what you feel in the community. That's probably what others feel.
And of course, you've had 2 extraordinarily traumatic events here. In addition to the shooting we've been discussing, we're not far from the Tree of Life synagogue, where you had a mass shooting. How do you, from your point of view, in terms of what you were just saying about maintaining a perception of safety, what has that horrific incident caused you to rethink, if anything, about how you keep the community safe and how you make people feel as though they're being kept safe?
Well, that was obviously a sad day for the city of Pittsburgh, the area, and actually, all over the world. That hit a lot of people. That was tough. You know it can happen. We train for it to happen, but you pray to God that it never happens. That day it did. I responded to the scene, and I watched our officers. It was truly unbelievable, the selfless courage that they had, putting others that they don't know, putting their safety in front of their own and going towards the danger. It was incredible for that. But looking after that, immediately after that, this huge sense of fear in the community. Is something else going to happen somewhere else? Which then caused us to really start looking. We were doing things, but really now to do more on all houses of worship to help in that realm.
One thing that is a positive story for Allegheny County in the last few years is that the jail population has been declining. It's declined substantially. The county is committed to another 20% reduction over the next 2 years. And as I mentioned, the jail population has been declining even as the violent crime rate has been declining. How do you view the relationship between reducing the jail population and maintaining public safety? Are they in tension? Are they complementary? How do you assess the way they interact?
Well, one, I think it'd be great if we didn't have to arrest anybody. If we lived in that perfect society where it is. There's people that violate the law, but there's people who get caught in the system, and they talk about the pipeline, to the jail. One of the things we're doing in the north side, thanks to some foundations, since the end of 2017, a diversionary north side diversionary program. And that's something that we've seen some success for that, lower level misdemeanor and summary offenses. But we see how that can expand, and we're actually looking to do that citywide. And we, obviously we need the cooperation of the district attorney's office and others involved in the criminal justice system. But, you end up putting somebody in a position where it's a continuous cycle of, they're never going to be able to succeed.
I'm going to bring in the audience in a minute, but to that point, one of the, I think, most striking statistics, 75% of the jail population has been identified with a mental health or substance abuse problem. In many communities, the police and the jail often feel like they are the mental health providers of last resort. Do you feel that way?
I feel we're the last resort to everything, good, bad, or indifferent. But that's a huge problem. We've trained our officers for CIT to deal with that and call somebody out if that happens. There's more that we need to do. Obviously, training so it doesn't escalate to a use of force because of that. And also to, I think we need to get to a point down the road where it's law enforcement and somebody that's a professional in that field
Together.
to work together.
So Milwaukee, for example,
Yes.
does that, has teams,
Yes.
and you would like to see that here?
Yes.
And what keeps that from happening? Is it dollars?
I think, well,
Or just different
I think
departments?
it's getting. I think so. We're kind of working on things. We have something going on with the city and some other agencies to do that. We're doing it with the opioid epidemic that we were having, to deal with those who were suffering. But we need to get to a point where we have people that are going to be willing to come out and work with us out in the field, because that's the best way to do it. Have somebody that's readily available to deal with this.
I mean, the jail population, half the jail population is African American compared to about, I think, 13% or so of the city, and that kind of traces back through arrests and so forth. What has been your analysis of why those disparities are so pronounced?
Well, I mean, honestly, in what I believe, and not with data to back it up, but the officers are in communities where most 911 calls, and a lot of these 911 calls aren't even calls that really are for police interaction. But who else do you call if you got nothing else? You call 911 and
In a mental health situation.
Yeah, for a variety of reasons. I mean, I can't get my 9-year-old son to go to school. They call the police, and we come. I mean, that's a little out there, but that's the kind of calls we do get.
So you're saying that the disparities exist because that's where
I think so. I think they're going because that's where the calls are at. Then you end up doing more traffic stops. You stop somebody on the street. Somebody calls for a suspicious person. I think you see a lot more of that. I think so.
And to what extent do you think, I mean, the argument that you hear is if that's where you're policing, that's where you're going to find people violating the law. And that it's really, it's a supply, demand, well, I don't know, the supply side kind of phenomenon.
Yeah. And one of the things, and we were guilty of this in the past, with when there was a homicide, shooting, whatnot, we went in and did zero tolerance, and the community was impacted by that. Not the people who did it. I mean, it's a very small percentage of people who were out there who were actually violent and are terrorizing neighborhoods. And no neighborhood, I don't care where you're at, wants that in your neighborhood. So when we started a group violence intervention a few years ago, I mean, we're specifically pinpointing, targeting who we're going after, so we don't have that impact on the community, so they suffer.
Let's go to questions real quick.
Hi, my name.
Oh, we got one. We have one. Okay. Yep.
My name is Randall Taylor. I work with the Penn Plaza Support and Action Coalition. I'm a resident of East Liberty. And so, Chief, the question I want to ask you is about the people who actually get on the police force. As we know, there are people who join the police force because they want to do good things for the community. We also know there's people who join the police force because they want to get away with doing bad things in the community. So I spoke once with a high official with the Pittsburgh Police, and they said if we can't catch them in the application process or we can't catch them in the academy, it's very difficult to catch them. And so what that high police official was talking about, bad police like Rossville, bad police like the one who murdered Tamir Rice, who got fired, and his former police force said he should not be a police officer. So how do we get at, what can we do to make sure that these bad actors, like Michael Rossville, do not get on the Pittsburgh police force, and what do we do once they are on the Pittsburgh police?
Okay. And I believe I was talking to you at Freedom Corner with that. That's all right. But no, that's good. Yeah, it is. I mean, we have to figure out, going through the selection process, going through the academy, and in field training. That's the time. If you can get rid of somebody who's not good, that's the time to do it. Once they're sworn into the union, then everything goes through a disciplinary and contractual and arbitration process that makes it that much more difficult for us, which can be frustrating at times. But I will say this, the vast majority of police officers in Pittsburgh Police are good officers who got into this profession because of it is a noble calling, and you're there to help people. Do we make mistakes? Absolutely. You got to be held accountable for those mistakes and make changes from those mistakes.
Okay, over here.
My name is Cynthia Coleman. My family and myself is presently in a life and death situation. My grandson was murdered April 13th, 288 Fern Street. My daughter's only son, putting the key in the door to go home to give the key to his mom so she could go to work. He worked 2 jobs, okay? He told his mom who killed him. He's seen the guy who shot him. We told the police, we gave them pictures, names of all the guys involved, addresses even. Now, presently, last week, they came to my house, okay, and we had to have a police escort out of our house. We had been staying in hotels until we ran out of money. So finally, the police down the north side, they put us, detectives put us up in a hotel last Friday. They tell us this morning that we had to leave and go back to that house, okay? And they said, well, we'll put a tag on your house so when they come, the police will come faster when you call. Well, if they come, we're all dead before the police get there. When we were home before, they stopped her, tried to get her. They pulled a gun out on her, branched a gun on her, and she had to speed her car up to go around the corner and call the police again. These guys are also chasing other people in our family. The police knows all of them. They're aware of them. They're talking about they don't want to pick them up from their homes. They want to catch them in the street with the guns. They didn't change those guns by now. They go in and out of the city. They're wreaking havoc in Garfield, Swissvale, McKeesport, Prospect here. They're all over the place. And they know these guys and haven't nobody done nothing with them, pick them up or anything, but we're expected to stay in that house and wait for these guys to come back. We're not getting no more assistance.
Yeah.
If you want to meet me out here when we're done, I can talk to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Can I ask you about that broader, the broader, and obviously it's a very specific situation, but the broader question of solving homicides and whether people feel that those cases are being closed and justice is being done through the criminal justice system. How do you feel that you stand on that?
So I think, well, last year I know our numbers were extremely high on clearing homicide cases for a variety of reasons. But I think one of the reasons is the amount of community engagement that we've been doing. We've got a long way to go on it, but we're committed to it. We're investing a lot into that. I think that helps out a lot. But one thing too, there's a lot of times we know who did it, but it's upon the district attorney's office to file the charges, to allow us to file the charges. There's times we think we have enough, but I understand they have to do the prosecution with it. But the more we get video, audio, witnesses, things like that, help with the case.
All right, so we have time if we have one more. We have one up in the front. If we have a microphone. Here, let's try
He's
to
got one there.
right there. Yep.
My name is Danny. I'm here from Pittsburgh. Can you tell us about the specific and mandated training your officers receive on anti-racism, trauma-informed care, or even just cultural competency?
So there's things we do over the years, but when we started a national initiative, there's sections of procedural justice that every officer goes through. There's the implicit bias that everybody goes through. We felt so committed to the implicit bias that we have a training unit that goes out and teaches the public because everybody has their own biases. We have procedural justice, somebody that's assigned to that looks at all of our policies, looks at when we're promoting, to ensure that we're being procedurally just in everything that we do. Training every year, as I said before, we go through 40 hours just in training every officer has to go through with that. So we're always looking at things. We just went through train the trainer for de-escalation, that everybody's going to be taught that again. We're bringing in a company from Texas, the Allegheny County Judge Woodruff brought in somebody that spoke to local criminal justice talking about institutional racism. And I was so impressed with how she led that conversation that we're actually bringing her in to talk to all of our command staff and our lieutenants, so everybody has an understanding of what's going on. This is bigger than just us. This is the whole system.
All right, Chief Schubert, thank you for being with us this morning.
Yep.
Thank you.